todas, ¿cómo están? Soy la profesora Lorraine y quiero darles la bienvenida a nuestro programa La Escuelita de Español. Before I begin with today's class, I want to give you a riddle, a hint, to see if you can guess what we will be learning today. ¿Listos? Escuchen, listen. What can fly without wings? Let's say the answer to this riddle together. 1, 2, 3. Time. Time could fly without wings. Yes, the answer is time. And I hope you've been practicing those numbers because today we will be learning how to tell time in Spanish. The time in Español is pronounced la hora. La hora. And telling time in Spanish is much different than telling time in English. So the first thing that I want you to learn is how to ask what time it is. In Spanish, we say, ¿qué hora es? ¿Qué hora es? There is actually a few different ways in telling time, but I'll be teaching the way that's closest to the way we say it in English. I also want to encourage you to listen for new words and fun facts that will help you in learning this amazing language. Here's one. The letter H is silent in Spanish. This means that you do not pronounce it ever. So the correct pronunciation for time or hour in Spanish is hora. Hora. Let's move on to how to answer when asked, ¿qué hora es? In English, when asked what time it is, we usually start by saying, it is, followed by the time. In Spanish, there are two things to remember when answering. Dos cosas. For the 1 o'clock hour, whether 1 a.m. or 1 p.m., we use the singular verb form es la. Es la. And for all the other hours, we use the plural verb form son las. Son las. Both of these mean it is. So here is the formula. Es la or son las, depending on the hour, plus the hour at hand, plus y, which means and, plus the minutes. Let's look at how to tell the time in Spanish if the time is on the hour. So if the hour is 1 o'clock, in Spanish we say es la una. Es la una. 2 o'clock, son las dos. Son las dos. For the 3 o'clock hour, we say son las tres. Son las tres. 4 o'clock, son las cuatro. Son las cuatro. For 5 o'clock, we say son las cinco. Son las cinco. If we want to say it is 6 o'clock, we say son las seis. Son las seis. 7 o'clock, son las siete. Son las siete. For 8 o'clock, we say son las ocho. Son las ocho. For 9 o'clock, we say son las nueve. Son las nueve. 10 o'clock, son las 10. Son las 10. 11 o'clock, son las 11. Son las 11. And for the 12 o'clock hour, we say son las 12. Son las 12. So you see, when it's 1 o'clock, we say es la una. For the other 11 hours, we say son las. In Spanish, if we want to say o'clock, we say en punto. So when we are saying it's 4 o'clock, In Spanish, we could say, son las 4 en punto. Let's say we want to say it's 8 o'clock. Son las 8 en punto. You may have heard me saying es la una when referring to the 1 o'clock hour. You might also be asking yourself, isn't 1 in Spanish uno? If you do, you are absolutely correct. It is. However, time in Spanish is considered feminine. So time in Spanish is a feminine noun. So in this case, when we talk about the 1 o'clock hour, it is also made feminine. So instead of uno, you should say una when talking about the hour in Spanish. Remember, for all the other 11 hours, you can safely go ahead and say the plural form son las. Pero no se preocupen. Don't worry. There's an entire lesson about this that we will look at in the near future. For now, let's practice telling the time with these examples. It is 1:10, or as we say in English, 10 past 1. In Spanish, we say es la 1:10. Es la 1:10. It's 1:06, or it's 6 past 1. Because it's 1 o'clock, remember we have to say es la una. And for the 6th minute, we say y seis. So 6 past 1, or 1:06, is the same as es la 1:06 in Español. Let's do one more example. It's 3:08, or it's 8 past 3. In Spanish, we say son las 3:08. Remember, 3 is 3 and 8 is 8. So we say son las 3:08. So you see why I told you, I hope you've been practicing your numbers. Now let's assume it's 12 o'clock. In English, we say 12 o'clock, we say midday, we say noon, and we also say midnight if it's 12 o'clock. Now let's assume it's 12 midday or noon. In Spanish, we could say son las 12 del mediodía, because the word mediodía means midday. Son las 12 del mediodía. Or you could also say es mediodía. It's midday. For 12 o'clock at night or midnight, we could say son las 12 de la noche. Son las 12 de la noche. Or es medianoche. Medianoche, which means midnight. Genial, chicos. Great work, guys. Now, the time is not always on the hour, isn't it? We also have minutos, which means minutes. Minutos means minutes. Before explaining how to say minutos, which means the minutes in Spanish, vamos a mirar el reloj. Let's look at the clock. So in English, when the long hand, that's the minutes hand, is between 1 minute and 30 minutes, we say past, isn't that so? In Spanish, we say y. So if it's 5 past 4, in Spanish, we would say son las 4:05. Son las 4:05. Now, if the long hand, that's the minutes hand, is between 31 minutes and 59 minutes, we say to in English. In Spanish, we say para las. Para las. So let's assume it's 20 minutes to 7. That's 6:40. In Spanish, we would say son 20 para las 7. That's 20 to 7. Son las 20 para las 7. It's no issue if you say 6:40 in Spanish as well. You could say son las 6 y, do you remember what 40 is in Spanish? 40, that's right. So you could say son las 6:40. Genial. Now we can practice saying los minutos, the minutes, en español. Let's assume we are in the 2 o'clock hour. So it will be son las 2 and the minutes. Let's practice. Son las 2:05. Son las 2:10. Son las 2:15. Or you could say son las 2:15. Son las 2:20. Son las 2:25. Son las 2:30. Or you could say son las 2:30. Son 25 para las 3. Because remember, we are in the 2 o'clock hour. So if it's 25 minutes to, it would be to the next hour, which is 3. So we say son 25 para las 3. Son 20 para las 3. Es un cuarto para las 3. Son 10 para las 3. Son 5 para las 3. Now, for the time we were all waiting for, at least I was, because I'm excited for you to say the following times, now that you can tell the time in Español. So let's go. Vamos. ¿Qué hora es? Can you guess the time on the clock? ¿Qué hora es? What time is it? Son las 11:15. Son las 11:15. It is 11:15 or it's 11:15. Next. ¿Qué hora es? ¿Qué hora es? Son 5 para las 12. Son 5 para las 12. Remember, it is okay to say 5 to 12 or 11:55. So if you remember the number 55 in Spanish, you could go ahead and say son las 11:55. Let's do one more. ¿Qué hora es? Do you remember how to say o'clock in Spanish? En punto, that's right. So we say son las 7 en punto. Son las 7 en punto. It's 7 o'clock. Or as we also say, on the dot. Excelente. Before ending today's lesson, let's recap on some important vocabulary that we've learned about la hora, the time. So remember, we use es la or son las to begin answering what time it is. So if we are in the 1 o'clock hour, whether it's 1 p.m. or 1 a.m., you say es la 1 y, and you say the minutes. For the other 11 hours, you answer son las, and you say the hour. If you want to say noon or midday, in Spanish, you say mediodía, mediodía. For midnight, you say medianoche, medianoche. If you want to say an hour in the morning, for example, it is 7 in the morning, you could say son las 7 de la mañana. If it's 5 in the afternoon, you could say son las 5 de la tarde. Let's assume it's 8 in the evening or at night. We could say son las 8 de la noche. And remember, media means half or 30. Cuarto is 15 or 45. Now, don't get confused by this. If you're saying 15, it's un cuarto, un cuarto. If it's 45, it's also cuarto, but it's cuarto para las. It's cuarto. And to say on the dot, we say en punto, which is the same as o'clock. Bueno, chico, I do hope you liked today's class, and most of all, I hope you've learned something from this lesson. As always, remember to, por favor, keep practicing what you've learned on La Escuelita de Español. Until next time, soy la profesora Lorraine saying hasta pronto.